I'm not just saying this for show purposes, I mean this. This is one of my favorite shows of the year to do. Welcome to NFL Power Rankings. It is presented by Energizer. We got the trade deadline. We got some trades to talk about, and of course, my professor, Eric Edholm. He's got a new number one and a free fall for one team that was sitting in the top four of the rankings a week ago that's now no longer inside the top 8 teams. And with that, let's get right to the numbers. 1 through 8. Here are your teams. Yes, Seattle sitting at the top. They move 5 spots, as do the Rams sitting at number 2. By the way, Seahawks active. We'll get to that in just a moment. The Colts also an active team at the trade line. More details on that in just a moment. They drop a spot. They sit at 7-2. The Bills also moving up 5 spots at 4. The Eagles at 5. The Chiefs at 6. The Detroit Lions falling 6 spots. They fit in the 7th position, and sitting idle from last week at 8, it is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's time for Power Moves, and it's presented by Energizer. This is a significant move. I think there was a part of you that thought, let's put Seattle on this top spot, but they needed to show some things. They did that, and they were active. Rashid Shaheed, they acquire him from New Orleans Saints for a 4th and 5th round pick. To me, the offense looked absolutely spectacular on Sunday Night Football. A piece like this, Eric, I'm almost thinking they got some staying power in this top spot.
Absolutely. I will preface this entire thing by saying, look, it's kind of power rankings roulette at this point. We've had multiple teams in the top spot. I'm prepared for the Seahawks to fall at some point, but when you add another deep threat, they've been running guys like Kobe White out there and Jake Bobo in the past. Now they have a guy who's a little bit more established. And when Cooper Kupp comes back, they're going to have 4 legitimate receivers plus those tight ends and that running game to aid Sam Darnold out. So I'm really excited to see what this addition will be. There were multiple teams that seem to be in on Shaheed. He offers a very specific field stretching skill. That is something that I wouldn't say that Seattle was missing. Obviously, Jackson Smith and Jigba can do a lot of damage, but another dimension to this group that I think is a pass-first offense, and then they run you to death once they get a lead, and that's a dangerous combination when you have the defense and the pass rush that they do. So, yeah, look, again, anyone could fill this top spot in the next few weeks, but right now Seattle's looking pretty darn good.
You know what's interesting? I always think about Seattle the last couple of years as a run-first team, and then if you pay closer attention to what's been transpiring over the last couple of weeks, and it was on full display on Sunday night. I mean, there were moments in that first half where they started to extend that lead, Eric. I'm thinking to myself, they're not going to take this to the air. And not only did they take it to the air, they're scoring in bunches very, very quickly. I got to imagine this combination with Shaheed now in an offense that's already been rolling with that defense. Can I make an argument they are one of the most balanced teams in the NFL?
Absolutely. They have 4 games on offense with 31 or more points, and they have every single game except one where they've allowed 20 or fewer. So, that element right there, the disparity that puts you away quality that the great Ravens teams had when Mike McDonald was there. The Bills have had, the Chiefs have had other elite teams in the past several years. They seem to have that quality right now. Still kind of wishing they had that Bucs win, but look, I just look at the recent body of work and pretty darn impressive.
Yeah, look, I was pulling into the parking lot today, and all these news of trades were hitting my inbox. The one to me that was starting to stand out where I literally said, whoa, was what the Colts were able to do. They right now, they do have a pretty good season. I know they're coming off of a loss. They sit 3 in the power rankings. Sauce Gardner. So that's a splash move. 2 first-round picks made me do a double take here when I was looking at my inbox here. How much better does Sauce Gardner make the Colts?
Well, they clearly believe he's going to make an impact because nobody loves their draft picks more than Chris Ballard, right? He has treasured those picks in the past, hasn't been a deadline dealer. I think Nyheim Hines was maybe the biggest name he's traded at the deadline. So to get one of the premier corners in this league, even if he comes with flaws, he's had 1 interception over the last 3 seasons, none this year. You have to be a little bit scheme specific too, but boy, I would say a defensive back was something they really needed. Now, pass rush has been pretty good. They've been getting after teams for the most part. Sunday, the issue against the Steelers on the offensive side of the ball, that side has been more good than bad, certainly this season. They've been one of the best offenses in the league. But if Sauce fits in and he ends up being somewhat of a ball hawk, or at least getting his hands on some of these passes and affecting the way teams throw at the Colts, it might end up being terrific. A couple weeks ago, I campaigned for Ballard to make the big move. If there was ever a year to do it, this was it. That price, we'll find out later if it's worth it. The question would be, are the Jets going to get a player equal or better than Sauce with the picks they get? Yet to be determined. But for the Colts, They clearly see this as a season where they can compete for a Super Bowl title. Otherwise, I don't think you make this kind of move.
Totally agree there. A couple seasons ago, I'm thinking to myself, look at these foundational pieces for Gang Green. Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner. We saw those moments in Hard Knocks where those two guys, iron sharpens iron was, I think, the phrase Robert Saleh had used there. To me, pretty significant. One other note here on the Colts. I knew they're coming off that loss against the Steelers. We talked in pregame on Sunday, like, hey, a little worried about this team's defense. They showed up in a big way with those 6 turnovers. Was that a blip on the radar, what we saw from Indianapolis, or cause for concern?
Well, in the 2 losses, the one to the Rams and then this one on Sunday, they had 9 turnovers. They only had 1 in the 7 victories. So, were those 2 games out of character, or is that the kind of performance that tends to snowball when you have that first turnover? That strip sack from Watt, I think, turned the game. The Colts were kind of controlling the first 20 minutes or so, and then all of a sudden that just sort of steamrolled and Jones fell apart. So looked more like the Giants version of Jones that imploded at times than the Colts version, which has been pretty darn good. So hard to say if it's in character or not, but now we have 2 performances where, Jones has turned the ball over and both of them just happen to be losses. So we'll see what ends up happening, but we know this Colts offense for the most part can do work. Sunday may have been a blip on the radar, though.
Yeah, look, this Colts team gets an opportunity to sort of reset, not here in the United States. You think about these international games, the Colts taking center stage here, heading to Berlin this week in a historic early morning showdown with the Falcons. It's Sunday morning football. You don't want to miss it. 9:30 a.m. Eastern, only on NFL Network and streaming with NFL Plus. Subscription required for NFL Plus. You can visit plus.nfl.com for terms. Time for Team of the Week, and it is presented by Truist. A lot of eyeballs this past weekend on what the Bills were going to do against the Kansas City Chiefs, and they delivered. They looked like the better football team, to the point where at the end of the game, I'm like, how are the Chiefs still having an opportunity to make this thing really interesting late? How significant a win was this from a Buffalo perspective? Because the naysayers will tell you, like, not a big deal. It's the regular season. Let's wait till January.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to blow it off given that we've seen the regular season success of the Bills against the Chiefs completely reversed in the playoffs. So I think a lot of people are going to naturally associate with that. But this was also a get-right game for the Bills. I know last week they dominated the Panthers, a pretty good football team, but still, I think it's important for them to play well against the heavyweights and show they can flex their offensive muscles. Running for 100 yards, James Cook. Chiefs hadn't allowed one in 35 games counting the playoffs, so that's a big development. The tight ends, Dawson Knox, Jackson Hawes, Dalton Kincaid were big producers in this game. They still might lack that big play threat, but they can threaten the immediate part of the field. And so that, along with what I thought was the best defensive showing, considering the opponent, considering the time and place of the Bills season so far. I mean, Cole Bishop's been under fire. He had a great game. Joey Bosa had a big sack to start the fourth quarter. Maxwell Hairston, his second NFL game, he makes a critical interception and a knockdown at the end. So, look, can they survive not having Ed Oliver and Michael Hoyt? Those are 2 big injuries. I don't know the answer. But what we saw was a team capable of winning the Super Bowl on their best day in the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And this is a Kansas City Chiefs team that I think a lot of people started to say, including myself, and we talked about this on Power Rankings, a team that was trending in the right direction and looked like they had an opportunity to stake claim, maybe even for the number 1 spot. I would have been curious to see where you would have slotted KC had they beaten the Buffalo Bills on Sunday, which clearly didn't happen. Meanwhile, the Detroit Lions, oh boy, dropping 6 spots here. I didn't have this one on my bingo card. If I'm being totally honest, you match up against J.J. McCarthy, who's got limited experience, even though we've been talking about him for 2 years now. He finally gets healthy. He's out on the football field. They go and they win this game. Is this just like one of those years for Detroit where the build up in our mind, because it's been going like this rocket ship, that it's these losses happen to good teams? Like, can I just story it that way, or should I be legitimately concerned?
Yeah, they do happen, right? This is a divisional opponent, obviously one of the best receivers in football. Justin Jefferson, is no slouch, and McCarthy was a first rounder for a reason, but we hadn't seen him play great football yet. He had some things going. One of the things that's really worked well for Detroit is getting the run game going early and then throwing off of that. Opponents have picked up on that, and that's where you see teams really trying to attack Jahmyr Gibbs, Montgomery. Don't let those guys get going early. That was the defensive game plan. A lot of pressure on Jared Goff. He took hits. And then defensively, some misplays like this, just not being able to contain and keep an agile quarterback in the pocket. So, I see some defensive issues, but I also see some offensive ones. Just the protection of Goff alone is a big concern right now. And yeah, they can still hit the big plays to Jameson Williams, but they're better when they're running more consistently and getting those short and medium games. So they're not finding themselves in the third and long and having to throw the ball vertically every single time. So there's been a little bit of a pushback from teams in terms of disrupting their offensive formula. And look, I know we talk a lot about the Detroit defense, but the interior of that Detroit offensive line really worries me a little bit, and I wonder if they're not trying to upgrade their football team down the stretch if they can.
We've gone through and we showed everyone the top 8 teams. You and I did this show last year. You've been doing these power rankings for a minute here. I don't remember it being like this last season, where every week, there's a real shuffle of teams, not only from what we saw in the preseason, but week to week, we got multiple number 1 teams. We got some other teams that were sitting at the top and all of a sudden dropping. It's creating some drama on the show. And by the way, I'm here for it. Speaking of at least my team, that was the preseason number 1 in my head, and it was not looking good for a while. That's the Baltimore Ravens. Feels like it might be going in the right direction. Where does Eric have them in his rankings? The answer's coming up next.
Power Rankings is brought to you by Energizer. Still going.
My goodness, he's done it again. Oh, that is pure Baker Mayfield. May with an absolute jewel of an effort. He's got him. Touchdown. Holy smokes. They cannot bring him down. Look at this one. Wow. Oh, my goodness.
Halfway point of the season, we're already thinking about these mid-season awards and who could reign supreme by the end of the season. I think generally speaking, Eric, your awards track with most people with Jonathan Taylor, Myles Garrett, Jackson Dart, of course, for Offensive Rookie of the Year, says the Giants fan on the show. Shane Teichen, also Coach of the Year. That makes sense. Matthew Stafford, I kind of paused for just a moment. Sell me on the Rams quarterback being your MVP.
Well, there may be some sentiment to go away from the usual suspects. Obviously Lamar Jackson's been injured. Mahomes and Allen have had their ups and downs, mostly good, but some bad. And I just thought, let's reward the guy who, look, maybe this is his final season and he's got a 21-2 TD to interception ratio right now. That's not bad. And when you have a first place team or a team very, very close to the top of the rankings there, you're going to get some attention. They have a tough schedule down the stretch, no doubt, but with Nakua and Adams and those tight ends and all the weapons and Sean McVay at his disposal, I think he's got a great chance to have one of his best statistical seasons ever. So, was he a little bit of a longer shot? Maybe, but I think he's right in the mix at this point.
Yeah, I like to pick just from this sense too. You think about this division, probably the best in the NFL. I think at least I would make that argument. So I like where your head's at. You don't have to go chalk all the time. Let's get to the rest of your rankings, Eric. Teams 9 through 16, the Broncos. My God, they are a really good football team sitting at 9. I think by the end of the season, we're talking about them as the top 5 squad. The Green Bay Packers at 10, the Patriots at 11. San Francisco moves up a spot to 12. The Steelers to get a nice win against the Colts. Only move up one spot though, sitting at 13. It's the Chargers at 14. The Jags, who just got Jacoby Myers ahead of this trade deadline from the Raiders, at 15. And it is the Baltimore Ravens, who we'll talk about in just a moment, at 16. The Packers, biggest drop, well, tied for the biggest drop that we've seen in this rankings. They move drop 6 spots. Yeah, I can do the math. Carry the 1. They dropped 6 spots here. I'm actually worried about this team, and hear me out here. I think they're really good, but I feel like they're sometimes playing down to the competition. They have these moments in games where this is not supposed to happen to this team. What am I missing here?
Yeah, it seems like they kind of toy around with teams a little bit, and they've been able to take over some games late, but not every single time. And to me, that lost Sunday, in which they had so many empty drives and had trouble at times stopping Rico Dowdle and the Panthers offense. Not very, not terribly, but still just enough to worry you. The lack of a consistent run game. It's been decent in spots, but really not all that great. That and the loss of Tucker Kraft. You see him going down right there. Major injury this season. Really had been their most efficient, most dangerous pass catcher. I know Christian Watson's back. I know they have high hopes for Matthew Golden, but he adds a different dimension of this offense, and he bails them out of a lot of tough spots. So that one really, really worries me. And you can't have Jordan Love throwing up interceptions to the other team. And also a questionable decision by Matt LaFleur to go for it on 4th and 8 from the 13 with 11 minutes left down a touchdown. You know, they lose by a field goal. He didn't kick the field goal. So that all adds up to an upset. And like you said, bad game and bad result because of the Tucker Kraft injury that, you know, may change their season dramatically.
Yeah, I do like Luke Musgrave, by the way, who's on this roster at the tight end spot. I'm not saying that he can completely fill that void of Tucker Kraft. Our colleague Steve Weich says he's the best tight end in the NFL, so that's obviously a huge loss. You know, they got a ginormous game. Monday Night Football, they will face the Philadelphia Eagles. Something tells me maybe they just, the way the season's gone on, Philly's a really good team. Maybe they just play up to them and try to make a mark here on Monday night. The 49ers, they will move up one spot in the rankings. They sit 12 here. You know what's kind of crazy to me? I've been back and forth and mostly off the Mac Jones, like, hey, this is Brock's job. He's, generally speaking, done a pretty nice job here. And what Christian McCaffrey's accomplished, like, I still think we're talking, you know, yeah, Jonathan Taylor, Offensive Player of the Year. I think by the end of the season, CMC is going to be in that mix too.
Yeah, I mean, McCaffrey's been absolutely terrific. And, you know, you've seen his game really kind of help fuel this offense. But the Mac Jones discussion is interesting. You heard Kyle Shanahan say the other day he didn't think Brock Purdy's toe would get any better throughout the course of the season. Well, I guess the question is, you know, why isn't he starting? Do they like Mac Jones better? I mean, things have kind of run pretty efficiently, and you know, I'm not saying Jones is definitely the better quarterback, but we know how Kyle's been in the past. You know, he gets somebody else in there, likes what he sees, and ends up kind of changing course a little bit. So we'll see. Big picture, we don't know the answer, but right now they're still a tough team. Last week, you heard Kyle kind of complain about his team getting kicked around a little. This week, they did the kicking. They were more efficient. And more, I would say, dominant in the trenches. You saw them run the football against the Giants defense, had trouble stopping it lately. So, you know, once they start getting some of these guys back, maybe they're even more prolific, even though we don't really have a lot of clarity on the injury front with them. And they keep suffering big ones like Mykel Williams out for the year. So I'm ambivalent about them. I love their potential, and their schedule is very friendly, but still kind of holding back just a little bit on them.
You know what worries me here? If Brock Purdy, maybe he doesn't play this week, obviously, against the Rams. My understanding is, like, the turf toe obviously is very painful, and if it gets worse, there's the potential for surgery. So they're being really cautious with him. Yeah. But at what point, like in the season, if he comes back, like there's a rust factor that's involved. You know, like they're staying afloat here, and Mac's playing well. Christian McCaffrey got like about, I think, just a smidge over 50%. He was basically 50% of their offense against the Giants. I just kind of keep that in mind. I think that's going to be one of the more interesting storylines that we'll be tracking here on Power Rankings. The Steelers at 13. I do want to focus attention here because there is real concern about this team's defense, allocating more cash than any other team to that unit in the NFL. And they have really underachieved. They come up huge against the Colts. Do we say, you know what? Let's pump the brakes on to talk about the Ravens, which we will talk about in just a moment here. This is still the Steelers' division to win here?
Well, they saw the Ravens win Thursday. They knew how important this game was. A dangerous, high-flying Colts offense comes into town, and they really did hold them in check. You know, early on, kind of took a little time to get their feet underneath them, but who else? TJ Watt, after a disappointing season, came through with a big turnover, and you saw the same kind of production we've seen recently from the offense, which has been good. Not great, but good. And so I think it was really like you said, the defensive footprint they put on this game after some bad outings, some outings in which really made me question the credentials of this team on that side of the ball, despite all the money and all the salaries they have on some really good football players. They looked more cohesive. The rush was there. You know, they got some contributions like Peyton Wilson and Jack Sawyer. Yeah. Those are important too. And the stars stepped up as well. So a big performance, but still only one game. You still want to see a bigger body of work.
I want to stick with this division right now. Time for Future Champions, and it is presented by FanDuel. Let's take a closer look at the odds to win this AFC North division. You got the Ravens right now. Yes, the Ravens, who are the favorite according to FanDuel at -140, +140. It's the Steelers, the Bengals sitting at +1,700, and at +6,000, the Cleveland Browns. This is a Ravens team. They're all of a sudden, they're 3-5. They're starting to get healthy. Can I make the claim that they're going to win this division because I did that 2 weeks ago. I still think they got a great opportunity here. Now there's signs of life with this team's offense, and they're getting healthier on the defensive side too.
That win over Chicago with the backup quarterback was so important, right? If they don't get that, they're 1-6. They're in big trouble, I think. But to get that and then to come back Thursday with Lamar's return, triumphant return, looking good, especially in the second half, to me, that just completely changes the trajectory of the season. So, so important to see Lamar being able to move around, make plays, be Lamar, be the same guy we've gotten to know over the last 8 years. But still, the defense has really made strides too. If you can imagine them continue to make incremental improvements on that side. Special teams have been a net positive this year after a couple of shaky seasons on that side of the ball. So the formula is there. We knew it. They were a favorite to start the season for a reason. Things didn't go according to plan, but that plan may be re-emerging now in a different form. And yeah, again, I like the Steelers. I think they've played really good football for the most part this year, but the Ravens are dangerous, and I just think they can hit a different volume notch than what Pittsburgh has shown to this point. I'm not saying they're guaranteed, but like you, I'm kind of trending in that direction.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of these percentages here, and an opportunity to make the postseason when you're sitting, at 2-6, not favorable. In fact, just 1.4% of those teams have gotten there. Once again, that was a critical win that they scored the other week against Chicago. Now they got an opportunity to make this surge, and they still have games remaining, obviously, against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who we just talked about. This is a Vikings team that we do need to discuss because J.J. McCarthy, out on the football field, getting one of the best wins of the weekend. I know we talked about some of the concerns we have against the Lions. Let's go positive here on the Vikings. Where do they sit on the power rankings? The answer to that is coming up next. Back here on Power Rankings, it's teams 17 through 24. The Chicago Bears sitting neutral at 17. The Houston Texans, they fall a couple spots to 18. Carolina, we're going to love them up in just a moment here. The Vikings also moving up 3 spots to 20. The Falcons, who we'll see in Berlin against the Colts at 21. The Arizona Cardinals, how about Jacoby Brissett? I actually think there's a conversation about who should be playing quarterback moving forward. The Dallas Cowboys at 23. And the Commanders, no Jaden Daniels because of that dislocated elbow, falling 6 spots. That is not good, to 24. The Panthers, can we just sit back and just go, you know what? This team deserves credit because when they start fighting and, they're winning some close games, they're losing some close games, you're like, all right, it's just the Panthers. This is significant. You could look at what they did against the Packers, Eric, and in my mind say this is the turning point of maybe even this franchise moving forward.
I think this has been a fascinating season. We've really seen Dave Canales show his abilities as a head coach. They've suffered a couple of big losses. Bills and Patriots took care of them. They've also inflicted some big wins, too, with the 30-0 shutout over the Falcons. It's been hard to figure out what this team is, but game to game, week to week, they come up with a game plan that is usually the right plan of attack, and it certainly was Sunday, featuring the ground game against the Packers, slowing down that pass rush and making life easier for Bryce Young. So 5-4, good for them. Look, this thing a year ago looked very far from a turnaround, so they're getting closer with each game.
Rico Dowdle, let's flex, man. This dude has been an absolute monster, especially for fantasy owners as well. The Vikings, they move up 3 spots here. Did J.J. McCarthy, maybe this is overstating it. Is this too dramatic? He saved their season?
It was a big game for him, right, Mike? The fact that he had missed more time than expected, had been out with injury, had to come back with pass protection that a lot of people, including myself, were wondering, is it a good idea to bring him back, right? Are you trusting your protection? But he did great work outside the pocket, getting away from the rush, throwing on the run, back against his body, making plays. It wasn't perfect. They didn't trust him to throw the ball all the time, but to me, Kevin O'Connell asking him to make that late 3rd down throw to Jalen Nailor was very important too. I trust my quarterback. That's what that play call said to me. Yeah. And he made some big throws, and the defense, Brian Flores, I thought had a big game too when their unit was questioned. So huge game for the Vikings. Absolutely put them back on the right track, even if they got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I'm with you. The rest of the rankings, 25 through 32. Cincinnati sitting at 25. They just traded Logan Wilson to the Dallas Cowboys. Keep that in mind. The Giants at 26. The Raiders at 27. Jacoby Myers on his way to Jacksonville. The Cleveland Browns at 28. The Miami Dolphins at 29. The Jets trading away Sauce Gardner. We talked about that a little bit earlier at 30. And then rounding it out, the Saints and the Titans. Eric, you're the best. I know it's been busy for you. For a complete update on all the trades, just check out NFL.com. primetime.com.